Floodology, a lot of changes. I want you to know that the information is going to come at you a little bit like a flood tonight. Frankly, I have 4 hours of information to present to you in less than a fourth of that time. So I'm going to be doing some cutting. I've already done a bunch of cutting, but I'll be doing some on the fly as we go along. As to questions, please save them for the panel at the end of the slides. So the changes are a bit of a blur, kind of like that blur. And I'm going to go through them, but I want you to know that Becky is going to have some information, an ability to provide an email for some slides to come to you afterwards if you would like. I want to acknowledge, do you even know how we're having this? Becky, those of us who know her know that she's involved in all kinds of things trying to help the investment community here. We were at a debt lending event, and there was a conversation with an investor who was looking to buy a package of more than 350 homes. And he'd been working on it literally for 2 years. And the seller had been stalling, and all of a sudden, the seller wanted to hurry up and sell, and he couldn't figure out why. And I began to disclose some of this information I'm about to share with you. And he went, oh my, that's why the seller's doing that. And I made a comment to the investor. I said, this information really needs to get out. And Becky's first response was, I'll sponsor that. And that's how we're here tonight. So let's express gratitude to Becky. So tonight, I'm a parrot. I'm a messenger. The reality is that any one of you in this room, a lot of this is public data that you could have dug out yourself. I'm going to share it with you and understand it's just a portion, but I'm going to act as a messenger, and I ask you to not worry about the messenger, hear the message. Changes made here could affect your fortunes over the next several years. So, Robert Kiyosaki, this statement stuck with me. Money is made through the knowledge of law and taxes. We have law changes, we have tax changes. And the pattern for those who've been around a while is that the laws change, then the funding associated with those transactions change, then the markets change, and then the market ripples out into the future until we have another shift or change. So I have some unique training. When I first got into real estate in 1977, I went to work for a man by the name of Richard Thompson. He was the only guy in Houston specializing in townhome and condominium failed projects. This was the middle of an absolute boom, and these people were not being successful. And our job was to go in and figure out what the strengths were, minimize the weaknesses, and solve those particular development projects. And it was a great training. So, shifts. You're looking at a man who's been through some shifts, and some of those shifts hit me and my family right upside our heads. Some of those things took not only financial health, but it could, my wife's right here, put a lot of stresses on our marriage. I suggest to you that not moving correctly with a shift can affect your time, because you can find your time eaten up by stuff you wish you were not having to work on. And it can affect your reputation. I know a man that has the respect of many here that had 53 houses from Harvey that he got caught with. And his trades decided that they could make more money with the insurance companies, and they walked off the job. That man has been working his way through, but his time has been eaten up with stuff that he would have preferred to have done different. And with that time being eaten up, it's your opportunity cost to make more money. So There's some people in this room that are pretty good at shifts, and this information can be shared one to another. The reality is, I visited at Wholesalers Live in October. I met a guy from New York who's pretty involved up there, and he said, you guys share information just openly. Everybody holds their cards up there. They don't share, they don't educate, they don't do free things. I'm told that Dallas has some of those symptoms as well. But in Houston, we have an atmosphere. Quest provides us tremendous education to raise the level of all boats, right? All boats rise. So I need to get your attention here a little bit with some of my own painful experience. I've been in real estate 42 and a half years, and I've missed some shifts, and I've optimized them, and I've gotten a little better over time. And I would like to share some thoughts about things my mentors have poured into me. My wife and I have some experience with this flooding stuff. We actually flooded 3 times in 2 different homes that were outside the floodplain. We're going to talk about some of those stats, some others who share that. I actually, as a result of the 2016 flood, spent most of the last 2 years in a walker and a wheelchair as a result of throwing my furniture away. My core muscles are not quite as strong as they used to be. So I have some things I believe to share. So there's 6 different categories of people here. Some of them are in this room. Some of them are people you know. They're in real trouble now, but they don't realize they are. They're about to be in trouble, and they don't know that they are. Some of them have an opportunity to escape trouble, but they might not choose to learn what they need to learn, pivot, act, and they're kind of fed up with all the shifts and changes and the stuff that happens. Others will doubt, and they'll be skeptical, and they'll harden themselves to the facts, and they'll pretend it's not there. The problem with what they do is it can affect others, specifically the public. Others will be faced with temptations for shortcuts, to deceive, to save themselves while harming others. And there'll be consequences as a result of that. And others of you that are in this room are ready to learn and adapt. You're going to go, wow, show me where the opportunities are. I want to benefit from this shift. And they'll study, and they'll lay hold of the consequences, conquer the consequences, and they'll prosper. So I missed my first shift in the early 80s when Evelyn and I got married. My wife, it was the first few months, and what happened is there was a change in the law that took development funding right out of the market, almost overnight. And I ended up with 55 accounts of financial pressures, a lot of zeros, and it took me 17 years to repay those loans. I don't want that for anybody in this room. It damaged relationships, it caused fighting between us. It was so early on in our marriage that there were a lot of relatives' pressures, even to abort our son. So the reality is I would not trade anything for the good that came out of that period. I found a true relationship with Jesus Christ. I became very motivated to learn. My character was changed. And there was some amazing good that took place. I had represented the custom homes of Cinco Ranch when it originally started. And I got a check from them that paid off 22 of those 55 accounts. It was an amazing, unpredictable, hard to predict And my wife and I ended up with a 4,000 square foot house in Weston Lakes on the golf course that we paid $70,000 for, all in the middle of stress and trauma and challenges and difficulties, 5 life and death situations with our first 3 kids. So 2 of us became 10. And my why did I need to learn? Why did I need to embrace these cotton-picking constant changes? Why did I need to figure it out? That's my reason. And mentors taught me that shifts bring opportunities. Oh, and by the way, the 10 became, that's 23, and there's 2 more coming in the spring. And these people are well worth figuring out shifts, and I bet yours are too. So, big picture's about water, but it's not just about water, the scale of the water, the depth of the water, the velocity of the water, but it's also about 669 square miles of jurisdiction to deal with. Houston 669, you realize what Dallas 386, New York 468, Chicago. So Harris County is 1,777 square miles, and Rhode Island, the whole state, is only 1,212. So our elected officials and the people who are not elected but are employed, what I'm going to show you is I believe we should all be grateful for the work they've done and for how they've arrived at things. Some of them may be kicking and screaming, but the reality is a lot of good has been developed for the citizenry of Harris County and the Houston area. So we're projected to become 10 million in the 8-county region by 2045. And Metro shows us, if you look right here, that's the population density in 2010. This is what they predict in 2040. And they can follow land that's been bought for development. They can follow, they have a lot of amazing statistics, and look at our job density. So with jobs and people comes congestion, right? And by the way, the roads, that's how we process water. That's how we move water. Its design is to go to the street. That's why we're not supposed to park in the street. It's designed to move the water to Galveston. So out of Harvey, there were 365,000 damaged homes. What you're going to find out is there were not a lot of permits that came as a result, and that's being addressed. So I would call this a big picture. So we have a whole lot of people, a lot of drainage issues, a lot of legal engineering and rainfall issues. This is going to be like if you took a helicopter and flew up above the big problem and you look down at the pieces of it and you see this gear working against that gear. That's the purpose of this chart. So our officials recognize that what they're doing now is establishing precedents for the future. They understand that we're going to have massive population growth. It's just going to continue. And with that is construction growth. And that creates situations because the water's got to flow downhill, right, on flat land. So the city's published mission is to keep people safe. And their policies have to reflect that. So I want you to understand the changes that are taking place are based on people living, not dying. They don't want that on their conscience. They don't want the legal liability for it. The other thing to note is that we have an aging infrastructure. We really don't have a plan to replenish the streets. Roads have a lifespan, and what's supposed to happen is every so many years you're supposed to replenish them. We don't really have a political will to cause that to happen. Then the experts are documenting, and I'm going to show you a chart, that rainfall is increasing all across the United States. There's a shift going on from a rainfall standpoint. We don't know if it's a short-term thing. These things have happened in history. But it is increasing risk to human beings. My wife and I, in the first flood, and granddaughters and so on, were taken out in a boat. That's not a fun experience. Kind of mess with you a little bit. I'm grateful that we live in a community where people will go buy a boat, a motor, and a trailer so that they can help people. That's the quality of where we live. And I don't know another city like that in the United States and frankly anywhere in the world. It's amazing. And it lays the groundwork for some good to happen ahead. So we have a bunch of timelines merging together. We have insurance timelines. We have some mapping that's coming. We have a lot of things that are kind of, they're not all going to come together at once. And just as soon as people think one storm of change has passed, there's another one right behind it, and they're just charted, and I'm going to talk about some of those charts. Amazing that local, state, and national politics came together at one time. What can we name where that has happened? It took the crisis for the various jurisdictions to say, we have to do something. All of Houston, all of Harris County was affected. Our officials estimate that it would take $50 billion to solve the problem. And there's not a supply of $50 billion. There's pieces, but there's not the full supply. And as to the future, our officials are saying there's going to be future floods, and we're going to need FEMA money. So we've got to cooperate with FEMA in order to make sure that money comes. So a lot of dynamics, a lot of cooks in the kitchen, if anybody knows that old saying, making the recipe. Army Corps, I won't get into all that. I'm going to tell you that some of these slides, I'm going to do almost like a movie. They're going to go 3 seconds and they're going to go. So don't be upset with me, I'm warning you now. So this is the city's role, and it has to do with adjusting from current design standards to new design standards. One of those things is your culverts in your front yard that used to be fine at 18 inches. They have mandated that it will be 24 inches from now on. So the county role, we've got some bond programs. This is the Houston area floodplain as it is today. I want you to remember that map, because when we come to the end, I'm going to take you back to the map, and I want you to see the opportunity in that map right there. So I've already told you about the 50 billion. So this is SB7 that was in the news about, we've gotten some relief for funding, and Prop 8 passed for funding. This is Chapter 19, this is the Houston area, and then this is the E2J, the gray area is what goes beyond the Houston area itself. So, who was impacted? I want you to notice something here. This second column is Harvey impacted. Citywide, 149,576 structures, but 28,000 of those 500-year floodplain, not 100-year floodplain. What you're going to find is our maps, not only are they inadequate, but we have never mapped about 1,250 miles of the 2,500 miles that are supposed to be mapped. So why do we flood? Climate, we know about that. You know, we get a gully washer, we get a year of rainfall in 4 days. Where does that happen? And not even in monsoon places that I know of. And we're rather flat. It's hard to roll a basketball downhill. Our soils don't absorb the rainwater very well. There's a lot of clay, and it affects. And the reality is a lot of what is in Houston was built before engineering solved the modern floodplain issue. Only 40% of the city's pipes and ditches are built to modern storm requirements. Only 1 out of 23 main bios has 100-year storm capacity. So why do we flood? This is the grasses that were on the Katy Prairie, and it absorbed a tremendous amount of water. We don't have that in the heights, do we? So our officials are saying stronger storms are coming, so we got to do some things to prepare in advance. And the will is that they're going to still develop in the 100-year floodplain. They'll just adapt to the new rules and make it happen. The study on the right finds that the FEMA flood maps missed 75% of the Houston flood damage claims between 1999 and 2009. That's an ugly statistic. So then we have flood games. More than 36,000 structures have been documented for repetitive damage. FEMA, it turns out, has a list of properties that they will not provide flood insurance for. I tried to see if we could get that list of properties. Wouldn't want anybody to get damaged by that list. And what I found out from the people at Harris County that do the acquisitions is that that map is considered protected information and cannot be provided because of the harm to the individual people. So current rainfall estimates are, the two columns on the right are what the estimates that our government has been working off of. 10.8 inches versus Harvey in the second column, 20.9. My wife and I had some adventures in Allison in the second column. And then the 2016 flood is what put me in a walker and wheelchair. So these are the 1% annual chance that you see up there. That's talking about the 100-year floodplain. The government calls the 2% chance of 500-year. So most people probably don't realize that Imelda was the 7th worst, most intense rainfall. I'm told that if it had moved 4 miles different, we would have had Harvey level flooding in houses. So I mentioned earlier that rainfall is increasing everywhere. Look at the Northeast, folks. Look, yeah, that's a significant increase. If anybody's going to move up there, they probably should bring a boat. So, first stunner. There is no 100-year floodplain anymore, folks. The 500 is the new standard. Just forget everything you knew, thought, went by with, and properties that you bought that were outside of the 100. The reality now is the requirement is the 500. As an average across the Houston area, that's about 3.5 feet difference. Let that resonate. That's a big number. So you can expect, what's interesting is necessity is the mother of invention. Houston has the most amazing mapping software in process to map our area and to document all this, and we're to have those maps in 2021. So flood insurance. This is also the second stunner. The reality is there's a lot of properties that are 4 foot below what the base flood elevation is now. those folks are going to be paying $9,500 a year for flood insurance. It is going to increase 25% a year for the next 4 years, beginning next year. And that's a house note for some people. I understand that. So this is going to cause things for people like the ones in this room to solve. Because there's some folks going to get run over by this. And we need to use the ingenuity. One of the things I've always liked about Houston was well, if it's broke, let's fix it. If it's got a problem, let's solve it. And that's always been the mindset and the respect that this town has been shown. I can tell you, developers, builders, rehabbers, financial providers, that kind of thinking is what's going to be needed ahead. So the truth is, not only is the National Flood Insurance Program broken, but our legislators have been so strong lobbying on our behalf that we've been artificially 15% below the national rates. And the reality here is 20% of the claims came outside of the floodplain, and a third of FEMA's disaster assistance goes to claims from outside of the floodplain. So the reality is the people who paid the least actually got major amounts of the money that was allocated. Major amounts. And that's changing, that's adjusting. It's not going to be based on geography. I'm going to talk about that. It's going to be based on risk. So what comes next? This is a bunch of the details of what's going on with regard to the flood, and I want to tell you what time it is, not how to build the watch. So this is the timeline that I was talking about. And the mapping has begun in 2019 and for delivery in 2021, and that sort of, what do you call it? The box on the right, I don't know what to call that color. The box on the right shows their fudge factor to where they can adjust the timelines a little bit. So, flood insurance solutions is not going to be a pretty picture, but it absolutely has to happen. If it doesn't happen, there'll be no FEMA money, folks. There won't be stuff in the future for flooding. So all the water's got to get down to Galveston somehow, and what you're seeing there in the various colors is how it flows downhill to get to Galveston. I want you to notice where it says 10 million right there. That 10 million is stormwater. The rest of the budget is allocated on other things. So there's not a lot of money for stormwater. I've already talked about this, the 2,500, about half of that has never been mapped, never been mapped. So minimum detention requirements have changed dramatically for those of you who want to do development. If you notice on that drain, it says drains to Galveston Bay. That's what all the water's got to do. It's got to go to Galveston. So I already mentioned at the bottom, the culverts now have to be 24 inches, and we're adapting what rainfall amounts that design has to be ready to handle. So understand, there's already been some things about disclosure. Those of you who are licensed, your sellers are going to have to do a lot of disclosing, and we're going to talk about that. And flippers, there's going to be requirements, and it's expected that they're going to increase. And there won't be, gee, I didn't know. That's not going to work with the new documentation. So Chapter 19 is the easiest way to protect. You realize that 83% of the 1.4 million buildings did not have flood insurance. Did not have flood insurance. So I already talked about that. This is the Floodplain Management Office. You can go on their site. There's a lot of good information. Permits, look at the right column. for structural damage and moving walls and so on, repairing siding that exceeds 128 square feet, roofing 100 square feet, and replacing exterior doors and windows, and obviously electrical and plumbing. So there is a cumulative threshold. So beginning something that's already happened, and most of you didn't know about it, beginning September 1, 2018, they began cumulative. So repairs, permitted repairs above $10,000 are going to create a new scrutiny, and that's what falls into the category about whether or not you have to raise the slab or not. So I want you to know that somebody's kitchen fire, hail damage, lightning strike, not just flooding, could affect all of that, because obviously you could spend easily more than $10,000 doing that, except if Tina was doing the design. But so this is the regulations, and the column on the right, the 500-year floodplain, that's what to pay attention to. 2 feet above. So I talked earlier about this. The 1% is 100-year, 2% is considered the 500-year. My wife and I were unwilling volunteers for a 500-year flood, and what some officials said was a 10,000-year flood. And I tell my wife, those are pretty good odds. 1 in 10,000, it's good stuff. We're safe, hon. It's all right. Now, digging this out, that situation led to my digging out some of what you're hearing tonight. So substantial damage. This, I want to read this word for word. Substantial damage means that damage of any origin, kitchen fire, makes the cost of restoring the structure to its pre-damage condition equals or exceeds 50% of the market value of the structure. The market value of the structure does not include land value. So your HCAD value is never land value, right? But you need to pay attention. Some people have been saying, oh, it was bad, you need to devalue a house. Well, in many cases, somebody's got a $10,000 structure and a $300,000 piece of land. And so it's pretty easy to reach 50% of a $10,000 value. Beware, that's a place to look out for. Look at the HCAD value. Demolition cost is included in that. Interesting thing about permits, you had all of those citywide structures that were Harvey impacted. Only 5,202 were permitted, and only 1,991 were finalized. We're going to talk about finalized, because folks, from now on, we have to final them all. And what you're going to learn is that our peers in the real estate industry are using the finalization of permits to get leverage on price, either in the option period or a day or two before closing. Let that sink in. So let me repeat that. If the permits are not finalized, you're going to see there's some paragraphs in our contract that require those to be done by the seller. So the leverage comes because they are not finalized. So we'll talk about that in a minute. Harris County is actually out ahead of the city. And I would, for those of you who live on the perimeter, like my wife and I, you can expect that there's going to be some copycat going on. This is going to spread to other counties and jurisdictions. Is there an appeal process? Yes. But based on not wanting to create precedent in the future, you can expect that that might be difficult. NAR has a form, or HAR has come up with a form for rehabbers. Let me just step over here and read it because I don't do very well from over there. So, planning to buy a residential lot or structure to build or remodel in the future. The city of Houston, as well as Harris County, as a result of Hurricane Harvey, has passed regulations impacting the 100 and 500-year floodplains, which are subject to change. So they passed this, but stay tuned for new chapters. Building a new home, substantially remodeling a structure, or repairing substantial damage to an existing structure located in the 100 or 500 is subject to these regulations. Essentially, the finished or first floor will need a height minimum of 2 feet above the 500-year floodplain. Let that impact your due diligence.
You're talking about slab level.
Slab level, 2 feet above the slab.
Slab's 2 feet above the flood level.
The top of the slab
Right.
has to be 2 feet above the 500
Right.
flood level. Not what, and by the way, I would add, beware of marketing a property and saying, oh, it didn't flood in Harvey. That may be true, but it could create liability in the future for you if it floods. So, seller's disclosures. The state promulgated forms have made a bunch of changes in the seller's disclosure, and all that you see there in pink is flood-related documentation that has been changed, and it sort of rings out the truth. Flood pool, we've heard about a lot of this. This is about the George Bush Reservoir, the Cullen Barker Reservoir, about all the homes that were built, beautiful homes along Fry Road that are actually in the flood pool. In the future, just budget for an elevation certificate for every property, period. You're going to want it, and you're going to want to be able to boast about it. You're going to want to be able to tell that it's a good thing. Elevation certificates have to meet flood management standards. You can go on this website and verify. Again, learning to read the elevation certificates, how to read the survey. So eventually building code is going to be changed, affecting all properties as well. Outside the floodplain and inside the floodplain. I'm not going to drill down on this right now. Our current foundation elevation outside of the floodplain is supposed to be 12 inches above the manhole rim. So the picture is like that, the street crown. So we have a lot of homes in Houston that are pier and beam, right? And it kind of went away. Well, this kind of foundation does not meet current excitement because it doesn't allow water to sit, to cool, to drain, to be absorbed. So pier and beam is going to be the new great deal. I need to wrap it up.
Yeah, we're gonna have to,
Wow.
sorry, we have to make sure the panel has time. So we're gonna have to maybe think of an encore so that Richard can finish his presentation. We might have to, maybe we can do a webinar or something, Richard. We'll have to talk about that and see how he can still get you guys the rest of the information.
The slides are beyond mine.
I think if you'll provide an email address to the survey that Becky has, that we'll put a package of slides together to share with you, because you need the information and you need to act on it. Okay. So I wanted to go to the end. It affects multifamily. Putting rocks, that's illegal, and that's going to have some big fines. That's adopted rain. This is a tool you're going to want. Write this one down, take a picture. Take that one right there. You can look up an address of a property and get great details about that. Everybody got it?
No. Hang on.
It'll be part of, I'm wrapping.
Yeah, I know. You're good.
So take a picture of this. This is a whole bunch of slides that are locations. that will have specific information to help you. It's interesting, number 3, buyers beware. Texas A&M put this together, and it's to help with the assessment of what's going to happen with insurance. It goes into various risk factors, and you can plug any address in, and it's a great tool. You need to know that there's some good things ahead that are going to affect value. They've been working on flood resilience projects on a big scale. These are the ones that they've been working on. Number 4 has already been funded. Number 1 has already been funded. 9 and 10 they're working on. And some of these will take 100,000 homes out of the floodplain. It will protect them. The old Inwood Forest Golf Course, that area is going to change in value, folks, because they bought the golf course and they're putting a detention there, and it's already funded. The money's already there. Lake Houston Dam, this is by downtown to North Canal. They're not only doing flood stuff, but they're making it pretty. And they're making it good for humans. And it's going to increase value because people are going to like the pretty, and they're going to want to be there. So these are some of the things to pay attention to, because values are going to change in those areas. We don't have zoning. We follow infrastructure. Pay attention to infrastructure, because that's where wealth is created. We have an interesting system called 311. You flippers, I would encourage you to get on it, get used to it. It actually has a heat map of all the things that are being reported. And politically in this town, money is going to where the map is hotter. Last couple of things. Commercial real estate in Tiger Woods. Anybody who knows the folks in commercial, they work in teams. Tiger Woods, at the top of his game, has had 5 coaches, short game, long game, the mental strategy. He's always being refined. He adds value, and that's why everybody wants to see what he's doing. We should add value so that people want to participate in our transactions. I don't have time to go into that. This was one of the last things I wanted to share. So, see the lighthouse and the home? I had a mentor that told me a story about a house up on an island. And the owner of that house was up above all the families down below. And he could see the ships coming in, and he established code with mirrors to be able to communicate with them. The people down on the ground could not see that communication. He had a team, and he knew what to go buy and what to go sell based on what was coming in on the ship. I suggest that we team up and we learn what to buy and what to sell. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Richard. Did you learn something from them?
Yeah.
Would you like to hear more about the rest of this presentation?
Oh, yeah.
We will work on that. So check your email.
Can you email out the slides?
Yes,
Again?
on the top of your yellow sheet that you got at the front desk, check-in area. If you didn't get one, stop by and get one. At the top of there, it says, for a copy of the slides, put it right here. Right here, it says for a copy of the slides from tonight's event. Go to realestateIQ.co/survey-B, and you can answer the question yes when it gets to that. And we'll send you those things. All right.